This ethnography explores how indigenous nomadic peoples of three of Russia's southern Siberian republics sound multifarious of place in a post-Soviet global world. The republics of Altai, Khakassia and Tuva, marked AK and T on this map, lie at the junction of the Altai and Sayan mountain ranges, called here the Altai-Sayan region. Greater Altai refers to the Altai mountain range that extends from Russian Altai southwards to Mongolian and Chinese Altais. Traditionally, peoples of this inner Asian region nomadized between the vertical and horizontal mountain steppe landscapes of different worlds. The book's main title refers to the distinctive musicality of Altai-Sayan and Greater Altai's indigenous peoples. Most famous is drone overtoned vocal music, also known as overtone singing or throat singing. In this solo vocal form, separate tones are sounded simultaneously from a sustained tonal cluster or drone, heard as a single note but containing many. In drone overtone instrumental music, these simultaneous sounds are played on fiddles, lutes and zithers. Jaws harp and end-blown flute combine a vocal drone with instrumental overtones. Timbre-centered music, as identified by Tuvan ethnomusicologist Valentina Souza-Kay, focuses on musical textures rather than discrete notes or lineal melodies. Drone overtone vocal and instrumental musics form part of this broader sound complex. It includes overtones and undertones, the guttural vocal tone of heroic epic performance, Altai, Kai, Hakas, Chai, and the percussive sounds of shamanic drum and accoutrements. Let's have a couple of short examples of drone overtone, vocal and instrumental music. First, for these animists, all natural phenomena and creative acts such as songs, music and instruments are living entities with a spirit owner to whom drones and overtones are often offered in exchange for benefits. In 2005, Tuvan master musician Radi Toulouche offered Dum Choctaw Kadgara, nasal Kadgara style, for safe passage to a spirit owner of place, Tuvan Air, at a ritual cairn when travelling across mountains to Avur, his homeland region. From his rhythmical vocal drone, an overtone melody quietly emerges. This next example illustrates the cross-border inner Asian soundscape of Greater Altai. In 1989, Naransokt of the Altai Oryankai indigenous group in Hovd region, West Mongolian Altai, played Altai Magdal, praise song to the Altai Mountains, and Jonon Har, ambling black horse, on end-blown tsort flute with vocal drone and instrumental overtones. For non-musical audiences, a visual representation of drones, overtones and undertones might be useful. These are all components of timbral music. Overtones are selected from the drone's tonal cluster and sometimes combined to produce simultaneous melodies. Or drones, overtones and undertones are sounded simultaneously as timbral textures. I use this indigenous musical model as one of the book's structures and to illustrate how performance practices create relations that mediate potential oppositions. These include rooted place and mobile pathways, stable self-drone and interactive relations of personhood, horizontality and verticality in multiple landscaped worlds, human and non-human kinship, and local ways of being and the flows of nation, state, and the world. Let's look more closely at this structure. Anthropologists will be familiar with Levi-Strauss's Mythologique series, in which he argued for a structural relationship between Native American myths and music. His comparisons with European art music, rather than local musics, were inappropriate. Here, the Altai-Siam indigenous musical model forms the book's first structure. 3 main voices, which form its multivocal drone, emerge and sound in each chapter. First, ontological sonicality and musicality. This was inspired by Radek Toulouche, who, during fieldwork, explained that Tuvan philosophy embraced drone overtone music, nomadic identities, landscape, and his homeland spirit actors. Ontology, a branch of philosophy, concerns individual ways of being and relations. Second, sonic performances. These draw attention to the centrality of sound and performance for Altai-Scion peoples. This contrasts with the Vero de Castro's Amerindian ontological perspectivism, in which humans see things through a constellation of affects, dispositions, or capacities. And Merleau-Ponty's embodied self, that is, enmeshed with the visible world. I am all that I see. Third, a shamanic animist spiritual complex at the core of indigenous ritual practices affects ways of being that include social relations with human and spirit actors in multiple dimensions. The inclusion of spirit actors as project participants draws on this complex and on indigenous ontologies. The second structure is evident on the book's contents page. Our fieldwork played out in the indigenous horizontal, that is, parallel, peripheral, and superimposed landscapes of the middle world, and the vertical landscapes of middle, lower, and upper worlds. This shamanic animist universe forms the book's performance arena as timbre-centered sounds place individuals within human and spirit actor communities in each of these dimensions. I'll briefly describe the book's 3 parts. The first part introduces the indigenous peoples of each republic, their timbre-centered music, and the concepts of ontological musicality and sonicality. It includes Chapter 1, which focuses on a series of performative bodies from where emplacement is sounded. They include a social body with a sonically embodied self-drone that interacts through life with relations of personhood as drawn to tones in the indigenous music model. A tuned body instrument that produces vocal timbral music. Gendered, multisensory, and multi-souled bodies, and a timbral shamanic suprabody, as in the following example. When Lazo Mongoose shaman performed a soul dispatch ritual in Western Tuva in 2006, he donned a costume that became his shamanic suprabody. He had attached metal bells, shells, knotted thongs and laces to his gown, headdress, drum handle, and drum beater. The jangle, swishes, and rustles of these heightened his sensitivities, activated an altered state of consciousness, and created sonic pathways along which he and spirit actors travelled. The second part contained 3 chapters: human communities, spirit actors, spirit places, nomadic landscapes, and ancestors and archaeology. Case studies illustrate how tambourine music is offered to spirit owners of place as reciprocal gift exchange. Russian orthodoxy is accommodated in a shamanic ritual, and contestations arise between local spirit owners of land and Buddhist protector spirits. How emplacement within indigenous group, nation, state, and world involves sonic manoeuvres within local festivals and across global networks, and how local performative affiliations strengthen ethnicity, indigeneity, and senses of place, as sonic pathways connect to spirit actors of nature and land, revitalized former clans, and ancestors of ancient nomadic khanates or empires. The following video is taken from Chapter 4, Ancestors and Archaeology. Hakkas musicians Sergei Chertkov and his daughter Yulia use high vocal tone for epic performers, high jala, taking turns to sound drones and melodies and accompanying themselves with a hummus lute, Sergei, and fiddle, Yulia.
Şahsi haylarını şeviz, şahsi haylarını sensek şürege şahsi bulalım. Şahsi haylarını sensek şürege şahsi bulalım. Serihini kayşilar şahane gönleri şeviz, şahane gönleri şeviz. Sablı hayşinin seslerin hayla gögle turşabız. Sablı hayşinin seslerin hayla gögle turşabız. Sablı hayşinin seslerin hayla gögle turşabız.
In this performance, Sergei and Yulia placed themselves in relation to ancestral epic performers by praising them in the song's lyrics and using traditional vocal tone and musical instruments, and ancestral nomadic peoples by choosing a performance arena of archaeological war stones, chartas, each representing a fallen Kyrgyz hero and situated next to a burial mound of the early nomad period. In this final part, 3 chapters, The White Way, with spirit epic performers, shamanic roads, provide case studies of ritual specialists who sound connections from middle to upper and lower worlds. Each ritual complex has its own traditions, but borders between them are porous. All share the drones, tones and timbres of their ontological musical models and open pathways that enable travel, transitions, healing and emplacement. The following 2 videos illustrate this part. First is a White Way Akjang clan ritual, in which ritual leader Avshan Kozyrkov communicated with middle and upper world spirit actors with Kai timbral vocal tone and topshore lute at a mountain temple's fire altar above Lower Talda village, Ongodoy region, in the Altai Republic in 2010.
오나무 사랑한 가lı가 가이나 빌세리도 소름윤내니 빌세리네 야다는 이기가르고 스미나와슨 그게 소이르디갱이 dimper그리네 가이나 빌일 가이라한
Jean's vocal and musical performances placed himself and the participants in relation to the Altai-Cyan epic world and its heroes that permeate Akjang rituals. The Tulas clan, through kinship participation and structure of the temple and ritual. The world tree, situated in the White Way's middle world rather than the shamanic lower world. Middle and upper world spirit actors, including Altai spirit owner and the cosmic substance Uch Kurbistan, who travel and send messages along sonic pathways. 18th century Junga Hanid ancestors of Akjang and the early 20th century Akjang revivalist leaders by unsounding the names of those who suffered during the Junga Hanid's bloody defeat and then under communism, and the Oirot peoples through the presence in the event and in Akjang's pantheon of the historical and symbolic figure Oirot Khan. The second video is an epic performance by Altayan Elbek Kalkin. Altayan Kai and Hakas Chai, the timbre vocal tone used for heroic epic performance, occupies a central place in the sound cultures of Altai and Khakassia. Elbek Kalkin is a with-spirit Kai person in Altayan Elu Kaiche. He received his performative skill and narratives from spirit owners and uses Kai to extend his sensibilities and travel to other dimensions. Knowing that the video would be viewed by a global audience, Elbeck used audio and visual keys to place himself in relation to local tradition. He performed Alcush poetical verses to call Altai spirit owner, Altai Edzi, to the performance, and used traditional performance methods, Kai vocal tone, topshore lute, and grave demeanour. Lineage. He performed his grandfather and father's epic, Morde Kara, and placed himself in front of his father's portrait, costume, and topshore lute. Tlingit indigenous group. He used their archaic vocabulary and performed epics based on this mountain people's ways of life, including hunting. Life trajectory. He added words from the Altai Kazhu steppe people, among whom he currently lived. And the communist period, he used a topshore lute with wooden rather than hide face. The book's coda examines some of the multiple ethnographic and theoretical voices that emerge from the multiphonic drone into its chapters. These include sounds and silence, performance and performativity, sensory, multisensory, extrasensory, ritual performances, nomadic landscapes and belonging, indigeneity, state, national and global pathways, flows and dissonances, place and movement. I'd like to thank Illinois University Press Team and Fund for Anthropology for supporting this publication. I'm grateful also to the British Academy, ESRC, and World Oral Literature Project for research funding, to colleagues in Cambridge University and the state universities of each republic for supporting my research, and Indigenous musicians, spiritual specialists, herders and hunters for their participation.